The light has not failed in 22 years. This is the fact you hold on to at 5:47 a.m. as you climb the spiral stairs to shut it down for the day. 142 steps, the same 142 steps you have climbed twice a day for 22 years. Your knees telling you about every one of them now in a way they did not tell you about at first. The light has not failed because you have not let it fail. This is the entire job, reduced to its essence. You are 63 years old. And the job is, do not let the light fail. 3 days ago, the mainland went silent. Not gradually. The marine radio that has carried the same overlapping chatter of fishing boats and Coast Guard advisories and the harbor master's weather reports for 22 years simply stopped. Mid-sentence by your recollection, a voice you half recognized from the harbor saying something about a quarantine, and then nothing. You checked the equipment. You checked it again. You have spent 22 years learning every component of this station's communications, and there is nothing wrong with the equipment. The silence is not in the radio. The silence is on the mainland. Hayes Rock Light sits 8 miles from the mainland. Not named for you? The coincidence of your surname matching the station's name was the first thing people remarked on when you took the post 22 years ago, and you have stopped finding it remarkable. Hayes Rock has been Hayes Rock since 1871. Named for a sea captain who has nothing to do with your family, and you are simply the current keeper of a station that will outlast your tenure the way it outlasted everyone else's. 8 miles is far enough that the mainland is a line on the horizon, not a place you can examine in detail. You have a pair of marine binoculars, 7 by 50, that you bought in 1998 when the station's old pair finally failed, and they are good enough to see the mainland in detail when the visibility cooperates. This morning, the visibility cooperates. This morning, you wish it had not. There is smoke rising from the harbor town. Not one fire. 3 that you can distinguish. Possibly more behind the buildings that block your line of sight. The kind of smoke that comes from structures, not from controlled burning. Black, sustained, rising in columns that bend with the wind in a way that brush fires. And trash fires do not bend. You have seen the harbor town burn once before. In your 11th year on this station, when a fishing boat's fuel tank caught fire at the dock and the fire department contained it within an hour. This has not been contained within an hour. This has had 3 days. You scan the water between the mainland and your rock. There are boats, 4 that you can count from this distance, none of them moving the way boats move when someone is operating them. Drifting, turning slowly with the current and the wind, the specific aimless rotation of vessels that have lost power or lost the person who was supposed to be steering them, or both. You have spent 22 years reading water and weather and the behavior of vessels on this particular stretch of coast. 4 drifting boats is not a coincidence. 4 drifting boats is a pattern, and you do not have a category for what the pattern means, and you set the binoculars down because there is nothing more to learn from looking, and there is the day's work to do regardless of what is happening on the mainland. The supply boat is 3 days late. It comes once a month, the same boat, the same captain, a man named Roy Castellano who has been making this run for 9 years and who you have come to think of as something between a colleague and a friend in the specific limited way that monthly visits produce friendship. Roy was due 3 days ago. 3 days ago is also when the radio went silent. You do not let yourself complete the thought this produces. You have a job to do, and the job does not change based on what you are afraid happened to Roy. You take inventory. This is not new behavior. You take inventory every week, regardless of circumstances. The specific discipline of a man who learned early that a lighthouse keeper who runs out of something essential has nowhere to go for more of it except the next supply boat. But this week, the inventory means something different. Food, 11 days at careful rationing. Fresh water, the cistern is at 60%, and the rain this time of year is reliable enough that you do not consider water your limiting factor. Fuel for the generator, 19 days. The light itself runs on its own dedicated system, separate from the generator, with enough capacity to run for months without resupply. This was the one piece of design wisdom from 1871 that has never needed updating. The light matters more than anything else on this station, and the engineers who built it understood that the light's survival cannot depend on the same systems that depend on regular human maintenance. You can keep the light running considerably longer than you can keep yourself running. You note this without particular feeling. It has simply always been true. and the current circumstances have not changed what is true. They have only changed how much it matters. At 2:30 p.m., one of the drifting boats has drifted close enough to matter. You see it from the lantern room, a small craft, the kind of 15-foot runabout that recreational fishermen use on calm days, now moving with the current toward the rocks at the base of your station, with the specific slow inevitability of something that has no one steering it. Through the binoculars, you can see there is someone in it, slumped against the gunwale, not moving in any way that tells you whether they are alive. You have a station boat, a 14-foot skiff with an outboard motor, kept for exactly this kind of necessity, maintained to the same standard you maintain everything else on this station. You go down to the dock. You think briefly about whether you should. You think about 22 years of being the only person on this rock and what that has meant for the specific kind of decision you are about to make. There is no one to consult. There is no protocol for this. There is only you and a person who may be alive, and the water between your dock and a drifting boat that will hit the rocks in approximately 11 minutes at its current drift speed. You go. The man in the boat is alive. 40s, by his appearance. A wound on his side, roughly bandaged with what looks like a torn shirt. Bleeding has slowed, but not stopped. He is conscious, barely, his eyes finding you when you bring the skiff alongside. He says something you cannot hear over the engine. You cut the engine. He says, "Help me." You help him. Getting him from the drifting boat into the skiff and from the skiff up the dock ladder, and from the dock into the station, takes the better part of an hour. You are 63 years old. He is not a small man. Your back will tell you about this hour for several days afterward, in the specific way a 63-year-old body tells you about things it has been asked to do beyond its comfortable range. You get him onto the cot in the station's small infirmary, a room that has not had a patient in it for 6 years, since the last time a fisherman cut his hand badly enough to need stitches you were qualified to provide. His name, he tells you between breaths, is Marcus. He says, "Thank you." You say, "What happened to you?" He looks at you for a long moment. He says, "You don't know." You say, "I know the radio went silent 3 days ago. I know there's smoke on the mainland. I know boats are drifting with nobody steering them. I don't know what any of that means." Marcus closes his eyes. He says, "You're lucky. You're the luckiest man on this coast, and you don't even know it." He tells you what he knows. It takes him a long time, in pieces, with rest between pieces, the specific halting narrative of a man whose body is using most of its resources just maintaining consciousness. Something started in the cities 4 days ago. Something about the infected, that is the word he uses, infected, attacking, spreading, the specific progression you have heard described in exactly this way on the news in the weeks before the radio went silent, except now it is not news from somewhere else. It is the harbor town. He says, "I got out on my brother's boat. There were 6 of us. There were 4 of us by the time we got clear of the harbor. There was 1 of us by yesterday." You say, "The wound on your side." He looks at you. He says, "A knife. Not from them. From one of us. Self-defense. I'm not going to apologize for it, and I'm not going to explain it further than that." You sit with this. 22 years on this rock has given you a particular relationship with trust. You trust the sea in the specific sense of knowing exactly how much to trust it and never more. You trust your equipment because you have maintained it and know its limits. You have not had occasion in 22 years to develop a relationship with trusting a stranger who tells you he killed someone and will not explain further. You say, "Get some rest." You leave the infirmary door unlocked, but you do not leave the station. You stay close enough to hear if anything changes. At dusk, you climb the 142 steps to light the lamp. This is the part of the job that has not changed in 22 years and will not change tonight regardless of what is happening on the mainland or in your infirmary or anywhere else in the world that has stopped making sense in the last 3 days. The light exists for ships. You do not know if there are ships out there tonight that need it. You light it anyway, because the job has never been contingent on whether you can verify someone needs it. The job is, the light burns in case someone needs it, because the one time you fail to light it might be the one time someone desperately does. From the lantern room, you can see the mainland. The smoke from this morning has not stopped. If anything, there is more of it. visible now as a different kind of glow underneath the smoke. Orange, low, the specific color of fire that has stopped being contained and started being simply present. The way fires become present in places where no one is left to fight them. You watch it for a while. Then you go check on Marcus. He is awake. He is watching the door when you open it. The specific alertness of someone who has been listening to your footsteps on the stairs and has been waiting to know who is coming through the door before the door opens. He says, "You lit it." You say, "That's the job." He says, "Nobody's coming." You understand that, right? Whatever ships are out there, they're not looking for your light. They're running from whatever's behind them. You say, "The light doesn't care why they're out there. It cares that they don't hit the rocks." Marcus looks at you for a long moment. He says, "That's either the most foolish thing I've heard in 3 days or the only thing that's made sense." You say, "Get some sleep." You close the door. You do not lock it. You have not decided yet whether that is wisdom or carelessness. You will find out which it was eventually. Tonight you simply do not have enough information to know. You try the radio one more time before you sleep. Static. The same static that has answered every attempt for 3 days. You sit in the radio room for a while, listening to it. The specific quality of static that contains no information, but somehow still feels like it is telling you something. That the silence is not a malfunction. That the silence is the new and accurate description of what exists between this rock and everywhere else. You think about Roy Castellano 3 days late. You think about 11 days of food. You think about a man named Marcus sleeping in your infirmary with a knife wound he will not fully explain. You think about the light currently turning above you, sweeping its beam across 8 miles of dark water toward a mainland that is burning. You do not know what tomorrow requires of you. You know what tonight requires. The light burns. You sleep in the chair in the radio room, not the bed, because some part of you wants to be close to the only piece of equipment on this station that might still connect you to whatever is left of the world you understood 3 days ago. Above you, 142 steps up, the light turns. It has not failed in 22 years. It does not fail tonight. Whether anyone out there can see it, whether anyone out there is left to need it, whether the world the light was built to serve still exists in any form you would recognize. These are not questions the light answers. The light simply turns. Because that is the job, whether anyone is watching or not.